Chief Smile Officer Mark Climbie-Elliott here at Operation Smile, and a big shout out to all the 24 superfans that have joined this great day. 20 years at 24, wow, congratulations to everyone that made this possible. And we can't thank you enough for everything that you're doing for Operation Smile this weekend by supporting children living with cleft conditions somewhere in the world. Every 3 minutes, a child is born with either a cleft lip, a cleft palate, or both. And it's our amazing medical volunteers combined with you, our amazing supporters, that make all this happen so that children around the world who need access to basic surgery get it free. And that's what we do here at Operation Smile. We deliver free, safe, effective cleft surgery and complete care. You can learn more about us by going to Operation Smile in your own country. Just Google us, Operation Smile, and you can give as little as $240 or $20 a month will help a child receive their cleft surgery. So thanks again, superfans. Enjoy the day, and thank you again for choosing Operation Smile as a recipient of your support.
I'm so glad you're all here. Thank you so much for being a part of this. This was in my head 10 years ago. This was in my head 10 years ago, and now it's here. And Jon has been such a huge part of making this thing happen.
Jon is amazing.
He's Jon.
He's Jon.
Right.
What are you gonna do? He's
Joel knows. Joel knows.
I know.
Let's start the day.
All right. No one yet?
I see 35. The number, you'll see the numbers at the bottom of the screen. The numbers are climbing.
38, 49.
And they can hear us now too. So
Oh, I see. Participants?
yeah.
Oh, I see.
I see 75.
Oh, there we
100
go.
participants?
Yeah, we passed 24 a while ago. So we are officially in. Like I said, we'll wait until
We're
the
in the
numbers
triple
are,
digits in my screen, over 100.
we are. Well, this is an exciting day, and we see the fans are starting to show up in the room, and everybody's here for the party. And before 24, there was Nikita. Carlo Rota, our special guest moderator, is going to take it away from this point. Enjoy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And so thrilled to be asked to moderate this exclusive panel, heavily populated by Emmy primetime Emmy-winning participants. I'm Carlo Rota. Let me introduce who we have here. We have the esteemed director, Jon Cassar, producer director, Jon Cassar. We have musical muscle, Sean Callery. We have editor extraordinaire, David Thompson. We have the man with all the knowledge, Michael Loceff, producer. And of course, we have Bob Cochran, creative producer. And last but by no means least, my Los Angeles rabbi, Joel Surnow.
One more. Rodney.
Who else?
Mr. Rodney.
No,
Where's
Rodney's
Rodney?
Rodney's not Nikita.
Oh,
No,
no,
I don't-
he's there.
I don't-
He's just hanging out, I guess.
Oh, is Rodney here?
Is Rodney here? Well,
On my
Rodney's
screen.
I'm just
Rodney's-
listening, hanging out.
Rodney's a special guest, but you'll see Rodney a little later on
Oh, there you go.
on one of the panels.
Okay.
But as was mentioned earlier, you can't have a celebration of 20 years of 24 without also celebrating the mega hit, Nikita. And so we have these beautiful people here to discuss how Nikita came about and how things then evolved into 24, and how come so many people then went over to the 24 camp. And before we start, I just want to say to all of you, thank you so much for my career.
I'll
welcome.
second that, actually.
So Joel, why don't you take us away? And it's free form, so off you go.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going to get questions. That's fine. We'll just do it like this. You know, when we were first. Wait, can you still hear me? My screen went black.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
my screen went black. Can you still see me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And you
Sorry.
look beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. I had hair and makeup for about 4 hours today, and plastic surgery, made Botox, the whole thing. All right. So when Justin first approached me about this whole wonderful convention that we're doing today, I said, you really can't talk about 24 without talking about Nikita, because the prime creative elements that made up the first season of 24 were all sort of gestated and formed in the 5 years that we did La Femme Nikita in the 90s. And so, Bob, Michael Loceff, and I wrote almost all the scripts, and we tried to forge an unconventional way of telling kind of an action show. Bob, you can jump in on the writing part of it. I'll go into the other stuff, but why don't you talk a little bit about how the ideas that we had on Nikita sort of extrapolated and went into 24?
Well, of course, Nikita was based on, the concept was based on the movie, in which she was an assassin. And we took that sort of German idea and tried to build a show around it. We wanted to be broader than just going around killing people, and we came up with the idea of just sort of a general counter-terrorist operation. I don't know if we even called it that. I don't remember.
Section 1.
Section 1 is what it was called, but I don't remember if we said, oh, we fight terrorists. Maybe we did, but that's what they did, in fact. So we had to think of ideas that went up against some form of terrorists every week, that was a thriller, which something we hadn't really done before, and that maintained, in addition to those elements, maintained some kind of an emotional connection among the characters, and to keep that bubbling week after week. That's what it ended up being. And that certainly led into 24 ultimately, although we never thought of it that way. We never said, oh, someday we're gonna expand this into a show about anti-terrorism across the world and so on. That never was in our minds, but it did. The idea did come from that, and that's how we got started.
Mike, do you want to add in terms of like being in the room writing one show versus the next? How does that?
What I was thinking about as Bob was talking was, for me, Nikita was my first entree into professional television creation, and the part of it that I remember most was sitting in the writing room for both shows. But the writing room was you, Joel, and Bob for me, and
right.
Watching the two of you who had done story for years before that. So you guys, to me, were like an incredible team, doing something that I never really felt comfortable with. I was always fine, when we got into scripts, but I was watching, and I would watch the two of you like banter a story. Nikita was, unlike 24, every episode had a totally different story. And one of the fun things that the fans might like to know that I found enormously entertaining was that Joel had a drawer filled with strips of paper that were like failed idea, one phrase concepts, like the president's mistress, or Nikita's mother, which were things they threw away because they couldn't do anything with them. In the entire season, when you guys ran out of ideas, when we all ran out of ideas, Joel would go into the drawer, pull out one, and every once in a while it turned into an episode. And that was like, I loved that part of it,
Yeah, desperation was a big part of the show.
Desperation were the two.
Right.
One of the things that I think the three of us didn't want to do is to have shows become action shows. We always thought that if we could do something and avoid action, and that's where the suspense thriller part of it came along. But Bob and I were big John le Carré fans, and we always loved the sort of plot twisty things in a lot of the great thriller writers, especially le Carré. But so with Nikita, it was a love story between Michael and Nikita, and that became sort of a dominant thing. We would do some action, but usually the action would sort of have another element to it that made it more interesting than just running and jumping and shooting. You know, Michael's trying to save Nikita, or there's some person that in there that is a mole that we're going to find out. So you're watching for more than just the footwork. And I think we took that to 24 as well. I mean, would you say, Bob?
Yeah, I do. I think that's a good point. The whole premise of Nikita was this woman who, on our show, unlike the movie, was innocent. She was not a killer. She was innocent. It was a mistake. And she was having to constantly do things she didn't want to do that went against her natural impulses, but she had to do them to survive. And that created a tension in the show that was there every episode. That wasn't exactly the tension in 24, but we still carried over the idea, I think, that of a hero doing things that he didn't really want to do, but he had to do to save his family, to save innocent people, to overcome some horrible evil that was going to descend on the world. He did not enjoy doing what he was doing. He had to do it. And that created a tension within the character, I think, which was more interesting, as Joel says, than just running around and shooting.
Right. It wasn't James Bond where it's just a good guy going after bad guys. So what we always tried to do on 24 is build family units around all our main characters, whether it was Jack or Palmer, so that every story had some inner tension to do with families, husbands and wives, daughters and fathers, things like that, that added to the again, that was learned from Nikita in realizing you could do a thriller thing and it's also a romance. It's a love story. So that was a really interesting parallel. And then when we got to 24 after Nikita, we were versed in the idea that you have to surprise the audience with your plots. You have to keep it unexpected. You have to always pull the rug out from the viewer and let them know that what you're seeing is not what you think you're seeing. And we did that a lot on Nikita, and we did that a lot on 24. Let me pivot. Let's just go to music, to Sean. Sean's music was a primary character on both shows. And Sean, talk about the similarities and the things maybe you took from Nikita that brought you success on 24.
First of all, I just wish this panel was going to go on for like 5 hours. I'm just so happy to see everybody.
Me too.
Nikita was my first sort of major show, so I was kind of fearful that I was one score away from being let go, and here I am 25 years later. The same thing's true. I'm one score away from being let go. I was two things really stick out as I look at the group here. One is that Joel sat me down before we even saw a note of music and started talking about the international feeling of the show. And I don't know can you hear this? Can you hear this piano? Can you hear a little bit of it?
Yes.
Yeah.
We were starting to fool around with themes, and I remember coming in with some really elaborate, theme, and he said, in his own wonderful way, he goes, "Sean, baby," he goes, we got to be simpler. We got to be simpler, and I just remember, and you talked about this character, about her, as you just said, Joel, it wasn't just assassin, cold hearted. There was a lot of heart and some
Emotion,
emotion to her. So we found this simple theme for her, which was.
You're cutting out, Sean.
Huh?
It cuts out.
The keyboard cuts
Oh,
out.
sorry about that. Okay, so I can't. I'll have to work it out.
Okay.
You can sing it.
I could probably play it louder, but
Play it a little louder. It's good. Play it a little louder.
right, see if you can hear this. Right, and I'm blasting it because it was much more intimate. But then later on, Jon, you directed an episode. A lot of times when we see an episode, the love story between Nikita and Michael started to form, And one thing I was always grateful to Joel about is he always let me try something really bold. You know, nowadays sometimes we don't get that luxury. And I had an idea for a love theme, and John, I was trying to go through my spotting notes to see which one it was, but I think I got the idea for the Michael and Nikita love theme from something you directed.
It was the first episode, because the first episode was actually the third episode, and it was called Love.
It was called Love.
And they were undercover as lovers.
Okay.
And they were being watched, so they even had to make love to
Proof.
pretend that they were together. So that was right off the top. I think that was one of the best things we did, is do that one right away, because it just kind of set what that relationship was going to be.
And I think I tried that theme kind of early on, and I think, Joel, you actually had the foresight to say, you know, we're not there yet. We're not there. You know, we're not far enough into the evolvement of that. But I started the flavor of it in my mind. It's like, in other words, the seed was planted in that moment. And then I think it was later on in the second season, I was allowed to do, you know, I'm gonna blast it, so it's not gonna sound romantic, but it was. So it was this really, and Joel, you allowed me to kind of you know, move about the cabin musically, and we were always trying to keep the international flavor of the show kind of expanding and untraceable. And you know, sometimes I remember in Toronto, you were filming in, you know, supposedly Russia, and you know, you were all over the place. And
Jon, pivot now to starting 24 and how our chemistry and with Jon and you and me and Bob and Mike kind of all developed a working style, or
well, I would just, you know, there was always a time when you guys were working, and you guys were at the front end of the process. And so I'd always get sort of the product. I don't know what you guys had envisioned. I only know what it ended up being. And sometimes you would call and say, oh man, this didn't come out the way we wanted it. And then I would watch and be like, God, I think this is great. But we did develop sort of an inner dialogue, I thought. You know, Dave's editing, Jon's direct, and Jon, you know, I just remember one episode of Jon directing 24 where he filmed Kiefer going up a flight of stairs from 8 different angles. And I said, why is this interesting? Why does this work? You know, and there was just something about the way we sort of planted the seeds over the 4.5 years we worked on the show, where we were still making things new, but we had sort of a silent kind of communication about it. Was almost like a dance partner. I think we were kind of like dance partners, and we were just sort of learning a new set of moves. And I think, if anything, I was the most vulnerable, because I know, Joel, I think this is no secret, you know, Imagine was not ready to sign on to someone like me, because I didn't have any major show under my belt. And you had to really hold the line for me. So I have to say in front of everybody how grateful I was that you did. So,
well, it was all to our advantage. All right, so Jon, you're raising your hand. I was going to ask you.
I was going to second that. You know, it was you.
Oh, thank you. All right, Jon, let's talk about when you came on to 24. We had done how many episodes? Like 35 episodes of Nikita?
No. Nikita, oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I directed, I think, 14 of them, but yeah. I directed every year. You brought me on every year. But I have to go back, because I just want to go back one thing first. You came and pitched me 24 while we were shooting Nikita, and I don't know if you remember this. And you came and said, you and Bob had this great idea, and it was going to be kind of what we're doing. It's anti-terrorism, all that, but it was in real time. And I thought, wait, there's going to be like guys sitting outside like a building waiting for bad guys in real time. I remember saying, I said,
right. And everybody wants to know, when did they go to the bathroom, right?
I think that's way too slow. I think you should think of something else. So thank God you did listen to me.
Well, you know, that's an interesting thing. Jon, in terms of directing, are we waiting?
My God.
Mike stepped away, and he didn't mute himself.
Yeah.
Oh,
he's muted
okay.
now.
All right. So, Jon, one of the things about directing 24 that most of the directors who came on didn't get, which was you have to direct it slow for it to play fast. In other words, the more you slow down time and make things excruciating, the more the tension plays. Now, we didn't really do that on Nikita, but what would you say was like the thing on Nikita that you learned was sort of the key to it? Was Was it a design idea or a?
Well, but I think we did do that on Nikita. I think I definitely got it from there and working with you, because you, unlike most television that I was doing at the time, and again, Nikita was one of my first things, so I hadn't done that much. And so what, most television was doing that. Just get the words, cut out the second someone finishes talking and all of that. And it was bumping me. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. And then when I came to Nikita, the conversations we had, when Jerry Ciccariti was involved, if you remember. And in fact, if I remember properly, Jerry was supposed to do the pilot and then kind of walked away on something else, and it kind of fell in my lap. Luckiest thing that's ever happened to me. But I remember talking about all of that, and you virtually said to me straight up, you said, take the time, don't rush it. The moments are important here. And I'll never forget that. And so I did that on Nikita. And then again, you virtually said it to me again. You said the moments are important here. It's not about the action, and the tension's important, but don't just blow through the moments. We need the moments.
Well, we had those faces. You could literally just hold on those faces for seconds and seconds and seconds, and it was fraught with meaning. And in 24, I remember some directors would come in and they would try to move the camera and go, oh, it's happening in real time, so it's all fast. Yeah. Sort of the thing you were talking about, worrying that it was going to be too slow. And it was sort of counterintuitive in a way,
Well, and that was the same. That was the same for me too, because I came in there and Stephen Hopkins had already established a style in the pilot, and I did episode 11, 12, I think, in the first season. That I just came in as a single episode director, and I'll never forget. Again, I was just in that point in my career. I'm like, okay, it's another master medium, close up. I'm just like, oh my God, this is just so boring. And then I got there and you guys are like, cross the axis, keep the camera moving, never do the same shot twice, give us as many angles as you can. And I just went, oh my God, this is my home. This is exactly what I've been waiting for. So I know other directors that first season had trouble with that, because it was totally innovative and different. And to this day, people come up to me, directors come up to me. We had directors sit on set with us all the time that came over and just said, what the heck are you guys doing here? Because we can't figure it out. And so I just love it.
And how would you describe the innovation in terms of what was happening, just in terms of not obeying by the typical rules of crossing lines and things like that? Or was there something that you repeated over, in terms of the style?
Yeah, almost. It was almost don't be prepared. Let it be organic. I don't know there's another show I've ever done that's been as organic. And so the actors drove it a lot of the time, just about their blocking. There was freedom in their blocking. The cameras became part of it. I remember Kiefer always, calling our camera operators like actors. They were with us, they were always with us all the time. And so that was part of it. There was just this organic, and again, I don't know if there was a teamwork thing like on 24. And again, it came from Nikita. The germ is the germ to germinate all came from Nikita, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. It always felt like we were all making each other better all the time.
Yes, all the time.
You know what I mean? Because we had one voice. There was one voice, and it was the show, and we were all serving the show. Sean did something innovative in composing that you told me a lot of the young composers come. Sean, kind of elaborate on this. Before 24, and I don't know if you did this on Nikita, you would score a scene, and the scene would end, and then you'd score another scene, and it would be a different thing.
Yeah.
You sort of carried over themes, and that would just continue over 3 or 4 different scenes, and it was the same theme. It was the 24 mood.
Yeah,
and that had not ever been done.
Well, again, this to go to John's point about freeform, we were kind of, paving the road we were going down a little bit, and you were saying to me, we got to have this feeling as the show was coming together. You were saying, we got to have this feeling that these things are all going on concurrently, that they're going on like one into the next. Because normally when you cut from one scene to another in a regular show, there is a natural presumption that time has passed. But every single cut in the show of 24 was every second of the day. And so you said, well, how do we? You put this to me, and this was really. You said, how can we do that musically to kind of provide the sort of incentive to kind of connect the viewer subliminally to the idea that we're kind of still in the same timeline, the same thread. So that's what we got into what we call the spotting process. Whereas in Nikita, we would play action scenes, then we'd go out, we'd go to section 1, and then we'd have the music come in again. But in 24, we tried things like starting the music in the middle of a scene, and then it would just sort of continue on over into another thread, whether, you know, Jack's daughter was in the forest or Greg Itzen was traveling on Air Force One. So it was
the same theme.
Yeah, it was the theme of the same sort of mood and thread.
Different characters, yeah.
Yeah, and it really, I think season 2 was where we really, I just remember you calling me when you were writing the first scripts and you said, look, I want to have an umbrella of dread hanging over the first few episodes. I just remember that phrase, like you just feeling that something's coming. And that was the unit of intention that I tried to put in the first episodes up until the blast at the end of show 11 or something like that. It was really, you know, these are just little breadcrumbs that I get along the way from creatives. And then it shows up in the directing of Jon and the writing and the editing. And so, yeah.
All right.
This would also be a good moment to carry on that theme and ask David about what he was told about the editing.
Where's Dave? I was just about to talk to him.
Yeah, I'm here.
There he is.
Well, the editing, starting with Nikita, and was very lucky that I got pulled off as of a show called Due South to come on to a show called Nikita. And I shared this with Joel the other day. They said, you'll be on this show. It's going to be shot in Toronto and finished in LA, and you'll be the Toronto editor, and we'll ship it off to LA. And I said, well, you better find another editor because I want to finish what I start. And they actually allowed us to fly into LA and edit with Joel. And one of the amazing times that I went down there was I left Toronto at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, flew into LA, set up the edit system and started editing with Joel. And by 11 o'clock, we'd locked the cut. I caught a 1 o'clock flight back to Toronto. Somebody said, did you even go to LA? And I got to edit with Joel and a wonderful experience. And Jon Cassar, who came in and shot 103 and then 101. Oh my God, Jon, it was magic. He shot 6 frame shots. He crossed axes. He did whatever he wanted. And we created 103 and then 101, the pilot, which was just an amazing thing. One thing about the editing quickly on Nikita was the fact that we never had an establishing shot. Yeah. We didn't shoot Paris. We didn't shoot Germany. We didn't have, in 4 years, I didn't do the 5th season. I was busy and didn't come back for what the fans brought us back. And I was very disappointed for that. But we never had one establishing shot. You know, they're going to go somewhere and do something. They cut to a tight shot of a lock being cut and away we go. And the
I
other
don't think
thing,
we did on
24
or either.
No, never had it. No one ever saw the outside of CTU.
No.
Yeah.
I think they saw the back door, but that was it.
Yeah. And on Nikita, one of the things on the editing in Nikita too that we got was a full-time second unit. And Ted would come in and sit with the editor and say, what do you want? What do you need? And he would go out and shoot it for us. Those little insert shots that would make the show.
Dave, let's talk a little bit about the pilot of 24, because you created a very important part of the show with the boxes. Why don't we talk a little bit about that?
That started with Stephen, the director, coming into my theater and said, we got so many phone calls, why don't we use some split screens? And I thought, Dick Van Dyke split screens? Is that what we're talking? And as we were working, I got a couple of my assistants to go out and find some shots for me or some shows that use split screens. And I looked at it and I thought, well, this is interesting. And Kiefer, the first one I tried was when Kiefer left the house and he's calling the boyfriend, you know, and looking for his daughter. And all of a sudden I put it into a split screen and they were talking. And I remember Hopkins bringing him in and saying, what do you think? Do you think we can do something with this? Like, why do just split screens when we're doing phone calls? And we went on to start doing split screens because we saw a show where the guy's breaking in to kill a woman upstairs, Boston Strangler or something. She's making tea and he's picking the lock. And I thought, my God, we can do this on 24. And we started it. And that was when Joel and So it wasn't all me that started the boxes. It was me that sort of decided that we're going to really go this route. And one of the interesting things is, if you notice on 24, the boxes were always higgly-piggly. They were never lined up. You get a big one, a small one, one over here. And one of the real reasons for that was the Avid took 3 minutes to render every one of those boxes. So every time you went to move it, you had to re-render it. So I said, well, then I'm not moving them. Where it lands when I put it is where it's gonna stay. And even
Boy,
when I
Dave,
left,
you're really cranky, Dave. You know that? Nobody can tell you what to do.
You know what? That's fantastic, because when other people tried to copy us, they always did them just like side by side,
Yeah.
the same size, and it never looked right. The
No.
weirdness, the randomness of our boxes were always incredibly unique. No one's ever done them like that.
and the AB camera was amazing, because you could literally switch the two cameras, put the B camera where the A was, the A where the B was, and you wouldn't notice that we actually switched takes and everything was switching, back and forth. And that was where the boxes came from, where the editing on 24 came from, and and we created a show. Joel, you got to tell the story of the screening on 24 when we went to that awful screening when everybody looked at 24, and we went back in the next morning to edit it.
I don't remember. Remind me.
We had a screening, and we had a show that was amazing.
For who?
We thought
Who was the screen for?
whole bunch of audience in a screening theater.
Oh, right.
It was a test screening.
Oh, okay, right in North Hollywood. Go ahead, tell them.
And we screened it, and I thought we had a winner. I thought it was absolutely knocked it out of the ballpark. And well, we sort of got rejected. We got thumbs down, and most of the good things, we're watching our scenes, and we're watching that. I'll never go to another one of those. Anyway, the next morning I wandered into the theater at 5 a.m. because that's my normal start time. And about 5:30, a little face comes around the corner, and it was Joel. And Joel said, "I knew you'd be here." And I said, "What are we going to do, Joel? They don't like it." And he said, "Here's what we're going to do." And we created what 24 is now, that day in that edit theater.
Well, we had to rewrite. Bob, didn't we have to write a scene?
Yeah, I think
Explain that the reason they didn't like it, it didn't test well, is Jack didn't. We started with Jack in his house with his family, and then he gets the call, and then by the end of Act 1, he's told he has to protect David Palmer from being killed. So
I think people didn't know what they were watching.
Exactly.
We started out, got some stock footage of a satellite and some guy in an alleyway making this shadowy phone call, and we set up the assassination, excuse me, right up front, so that people say, okay, this is a thriller, it's about an assassination. Then when you go to Jack Bauer, this poor guy's going to get involved in this incredible international thing, when all he really wants to do is keep his family together. And that first 3 minutes nailed everything.
Yeah, and then we tested it again and went through the roof. But Dave, was that all stock footage, or did we shoot any of that?
We actually sold the show on stock footage. We put it together all stock footage, but you reshot the opening part of the show after we locked the show. But I remember you saying, we're going to bring the president up front. We're going to start the show. I said, it's real time. How can we do that? You can do a lot when you're playing with real time. And that's what we did. We started with the president and went on from there.
There you go.
And then you shot the opening of 24 as it went to air for the pilot.
In like Kuala Lumpur or something.
Yeah. An alley. Yeah. You guys built an alley in the back lot.
And called it Kuala Lumpur. Yeah. Hey, Carlo, why don't you talk a little bit as an actor, sort of the different experience, what was similar, different from Nikita? I mean, Nikita, you had a really long and convoluted, awesome arc. And then you came on to 24. Was the acting experience different from show to show? Did the real time change your perception of what you needed to do as an actor?
That's, great questions. I have always maintained that things, as far as being an actor on a show, have never been as good as they were when I was on 24. But I had the most fun ever on a TV show with Nikita.
Yeah.
And it was early days for me as an actor too. I actually hadn't done very much at all. And I was just amazed and probably spoiled, and as a result have really caused consternation on other sets when I do the same thing, where on Nikita, you know, often the directors, whether it be John or whomever, would just go, "What's Carlo gonna do?"
You know, it's
And you know, I would, you know, I just loved playing Mick. I loved playing Mick. I loved playing Mick so much. And apparently, if I remember rightly, wasn't that part originally supposed to go to Billy Idol?
I have no recollection of that.
You told me that.
Let's just say yes.
Okay.
Let's just say yes.
Anyway, so it was just this amazing freedom with Mick. You know, I would come in, I would do these things, and people go, "Oh, that's great. That's great." So, you know, then cut to, let's say, some other show where, and by the way, I think, in all honesty, even the show I'm doing right now, I'm playing a version of Mick Stoppel on any other show I've done.
How come we don't get paid? How come Bob?
Yeah, that's right. You know, can I just say that when I first saw it, the Nick Stoppel, it was a scene in an alley, and even in that little exchange, you were like a spy, and you had a wink of humor going on. And one of the things that I loved what Joel did is I remember we were spotting a couple weeks later, and I think you turned to me and you said, "What do you think of this character?" I said, I quite like him. And then if I remember correctly, you went from being her neighbor and like, you know, and then being the big Master Chief guy.
Yes.
And then you were the pup. You were actually an actor because you were this very shy person. I mean, it was extraordinary what happened. It was very wonderful.
It was that famous episode where I played 3 different characters that Joel directed.
How come you didn't get nominated for a Nobel Prize or something?
And I remember being holed up in Puerto Escondido in Mexico with some kind of dysentery or something. I was in the hotel room, and that episode comes on in Spanish with me playing 3 completely different characters. Mr. Jones, Mick, and the actor, right? And and I remember lying there in the pain of my illness, thinking to myself, "What a fucking great show, man!"
Oh God. Well, anyway, as you could tell, there was a lot of chemistry that we all had that kept this thing going. Bob, do you want to add anything just in terms of, you know, just the Nikita part of 24? I mean, I know the fans are here not really to listen about Nikita as much as 24, but it is, you know, it was our education in terms of all working together, you know?
Yeah, no question about it. I think from a story point of view, I'm sure, I'm not going to cite examples, but I'm sure I could cite a bunch where we took storylines from Nikita, a version of them anyway, and used them in 24 because we realized Nikita was 24 light. I mean, it had really started in that direction of thrillers, of anti-terrorism, of the political stuff, juxtaposed with the on-the-ground fighting terror, layered into the romantic and personal relationships the characters had without ever losing that sense of, as you said earlier, that sense of menace, the sense of overhanging dread, something bad's coming down, something wicked this way comes, we got to be ready for it. All those things were in Nikita. I don't know that we ever articulated them, but they were there.
Think about this, Bob. Section 1, Burkhoff.
No, of course.
Yeah.
24. CTU, Chloe.
Yeah.
Identical. Yeah. I mean, it even looked similar. I mean, they function the same. You had the techie giving the action hero his orders. I mean, that's one example of a parallel between the two shows that, you know, is pretty front and center.
Yeah, structurally, the similarities are very striking, but I think even storylines, you could probably make some one-to-one correspondences too. Yeah,
I'm sure. Yeah, Mike. Mike, you're on
muted.
mute. Unmute, Mike.
Mike, you're muted.
Mike, you're muted. Unmute.
Okay, well, I'll unmute myself.
There
then.
we are.
Okay,
Okay, fine.
it's really like a question for Bob in this case, because this is a common creative thing I noticed between Nikita and 24. And I saw it first on Nikita while doing the show with you guys, that Joel was ruthless about changing the storyline and also going into the editing room and cutting out all kinds of great scenes that we wrote. He really treated every point as a new starting point. Like if the episode wasn't doing what we were doing it in terms of story in the script, he would kind of direct us to go in a new direction that felt better. And when he got to the editing room in Nikita, and this continued in 24, it seemed like he treated that what he was seeing with Dave in the editing room as a new thing that he'd never even heard of before, and treating it, what do we need to do to this to make it good? And it seemed to freak out some of the writers and some of the people who saw him ruthlessly cut scenes and change things. Was that something that you saw, Bob, when you worked with Joel in the past?
yeah, I think no question. I saw it more on 24, I think, but I mean, Joel should speak to this, but I felt like he would sit in the editing room and he wouldn't say, how can I make this tell the story the script tells? He would say, how can I make this tell the best story?
Right, exactly.
And if it turned out to be what the script was portraying,
all the time.
if it had to be something else, then it had to be something else.
Well, you and I, Bob, would have an idea that this story was going to be about this, that, and the other. And by the time John got through shooting it and we saw Dave put it together, that idea wasn't there.
Right.
But you realize there's all this tension between Michael and Nikita, and like, oh, that's where the story is. It's between these two players, not like Michael is conflicted with operations about, you know. And I think that happened to a lesser degree on 24, but you know, 24 was still like our first season was just figuring out real time how do you do this? I mean, 24 didn't have as many themes. Like a standalone episode will have a theme. Like Bob, you and I would start and go, this will be a story about Michael betrays Nikita.
Yeah.
But that's not, 24 didn't quite have that, did it?
You really couldn't do that because the next show had to pick up 1 second after this show ended.
Yeah.
So there had to be a sense of continuity.
Speaking of themes, I just want to say, I think it should be said that nowhere in Joel Surnow's time that you and I spent together is there a clarinet anywhere in any of his scores. For some reason,
clarinets.
He just hated the sound of a clarinet. And then when we went to 24 season 6 and he stepped aside, I put clarinet all over the damn place. And I think
not.
Yeah, I did not. No, but I think we have to. As we're speaking of Nikita, I think we have to give a posthumous shout out to Blaine Johnson, who was our music supervisor,
Yes.
and he found some of the best music. And I just gotta share this story. There was once he did there was a thing with Operations in Madeline, and he licensed this jazz song. And in a flashback episode, we were going to relicense the tune, and we couldn't afford it anymore because he bought the song from a young singer named Diana Krall, you know, in season 2. And then when we went to go use it again in season 4, the price was like 10 times the amount, so I had to redo it myself. So he just found the most amazing music.
And he did the pilot of 24.
He did, yeah. He found a lot of music on 24.
But that was a real big difference. That was the one thing that was so different, is that we used all those needle drops on Nikita, and we didn't use any on 24.
Well, it's funny because in the pilot we did, because we had Alicia and her friends driving around in the car,
the van,
and we used some of that to score.
You tempted Madonna.
It faded away. We tempted Madonna. But that faded away, Sean. We didn't really have much needle dropping as the season went on.
Occasional club scenes, but extremely rare. Extremely rare.
But Nikita, it was crucial. It was, and especially I'll never forget doing those big action scenes to like Iggy Pop, and I was just
Oh,
like, wow, this
amazing.
is so cool.
Yeah.
So different than anything I've done before.
All right.
Can I ask a quick, just a little shout out to the fact that, you know, I've always considered Nikita to be a Canadian success story. I mean, not only was it shot in Canada, you know, you had a French Canadian
crew, directors,
director, and everything. Did shooting in Canada, or it being in Canada, did that have an effect on things? I mean, it did have an international flair, so I guess that being in Canada, being outside the US, made it international. Also, Toronto tends to be every city that you ever want to shoot in, except Toronto. You know, anyone that tries to shoot Toronto as Toronto, they end up saying it doesn't look enough like Toronto. But did shooting in Canada, did that energy have an effect on the show?
John, you've always shot in Toronto, so
until you brought me down to LA to shoot 24, that was my home base.
Do you feel like there's I couldn't really tell it that there was a big difference. I mean, because Toronto's a generic city, we made Nikita a generic city. We didn't ever say where it was until like the 5th season. Then we showed the Eiffel Tower, remember?
Yeah, I think the big plus for us, Joel, was the acting base that was there.
Yeah.
You know, that you tapped into so beautifully, and we ended up bringing many of those people onto 24. You know,
there's so many. The late great Alberta, and
Margot Kidder,
Doug O'Keefe.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, it was just a really great acting base. I think they're there for us, and Toronto, like he says, Toronto is just easier to make look other places. LA is very difficult. LA looks like LA. It's really hard to make LA look like any other city. It really is. Where Toronto, we have lots of options.
Yeah. Okay. I think
I'm going to ask one last thing. There's a question that everyone's been asking me. I'm going to direct it at you, Joel, before we wrap this up. And it's actually now, if we pivot from Nikita to 24, people are asking, do you see a future for 24?
I think 24 one day will get resurrected. It won't be. I think the future of 24 is in a couple of years when there is a new team of writers, a new team of producers, directors, and a new Jack Bauer. And I think that's where it will live, sort of like my friend Peter Lenkoff's show, Hawaii Five-0, came on 25 years after, reinvented it, and did it. I mean, I'm retired. Bob is, you know, works when he wants to work. Loceff. I mean, this group that was the creative force behind it won't probably be doing 24 that way. But 24 in real time is such a great conceit and such a great concept for any show that I do hope one day that somebody who has the ability to crack the code of the show can do it, because I think it adds so much. I mean, we took an ordinary kind of an action show, and by making it real time, we created something that TV almost never gets, which is suspense. And that's where I think the real value is. So that's the short answer. Bob, unless you want to go ahead and
I agree with that. That's a good answer.
Okay. I got Bob's approval, so we can we can shoot it. Give it to Cassar to shoot. Okay.
You got to get Kiefer out of Russia, though. You got to answer. You got to get Bauer out of Russia, right? Isn't that where we last sent him? We got to get him out of there.
Yeah. Oh well. Anyway, thank you for showing up, everybody, and out there and in here. It was awesome.
This was fun.
Oh
yeah, lots of fun. Lots of fun.
Okay.